interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin.
We are back. We're diving into episodes 3 and 4 of Rings of Power Season 2. So this one is titled, I didn't read the title on the other two. This one is titled The Eagle and the Scepter. We immediately pick up with Isildur, or Elendil. After his son Isildur is presumed dead in the eruption of Mount Doom, Sea Captain Elendil returns to Numenor with the blinded Queen Regent Muriel and other survivors. He attempts to take Isildur's horse Beric with him, but the horse refuses to go, and Elendil releases him. Beric then returns to Mordor and finds Isildur alive in a nest of giant spiders. Beric awakens Isildur, who fights a particularly large spider and escapes. Elsewhere in Mordor, Adar asks the hill troll Damrod to join his army in fighting Sauron. So, really quick opening to this, and a lot to unpack here. I've seen some people say that Isildur actually fights Shelob. I just think it's just... There are giant spiders in Middle-earth, and that is the most messed up thing that Tolkien ever created.
It's track
the worst.
in the official Rings of Power Season 2 soundtrack, the song that plays during that scene is titled Shelob. So that is meant to be Shelob, and the little hatchlings that are coming out are meant to be the giant spiders that will eventually invade Greenwood the Great and turn it into Mirkwood.
Yeah. So while that's one of the things, I hate the giant spiders, but I also think it's one of the coolest things in
it's metal AF.
It's so good. I have an issue again. I feel like that is fan service. Like, let's put Shelob in there.
Yeah, agreed. They shoehorned her in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
However, I'm all in on Hill Troll Damrod joining.
Bro, give me all the Damrod.
I'm here for him. He just shows up.
Ready for that.
He gives 0 Fs. Doesn't he kill one of the orcs?
He kills the emissary. Like, he drops his head, and Adar is just like, I see you got our message, or something like that.
Yes.
Dude, that's so good. I am looking forward to seeing and hearing more from Damrod.
Adar's like, I'm a little intimidated right now, and maybe turned on, but here we go.
Aroused.
So then we cut. That's a cool scene. Also, you sent us the TikToks of it earlier. Damrod has the most badass theme music.
Bro, so good.
In the show. It's
so good.
Awesome. So this is one of praise be to the show for this.
We haven't mentioned it yet, but this is a perfect time to... I have very quickly become a fan of Bear McCreary.
I really like him.
His work with the music in this show has been very, very good.
So I
one
have
of the
one
consistently best parts of the show, I think, has been the music.
I would agree. I have one complaint, is that Bear McCreary, and I don't know a whole lot about musical terms, he did the theme music for Walking Dead. He might have done all of Walking Dead. But he has that rhythm in his strings that you particularly associate with the theme song from Walking Dead that he likes to echo. I hear it pop up again and again in his music.
That's his calling card?
Yes. And so watching this, there have been a couple of times that I'm like, I hear the theme music of Walking Dead, whether it's in a different key or whatever. I hear that specific string rhythm again. So that is my only complaint, because quite a bit of it is very, very good. And there are almost moments that, I mean, he's not Howard Shore, but there are almost moments that I was like, that got me close. That got me close to a Howard Shore moment. That was good. So he did a
really good job of taking an existing parameters, essentially, of like, this is what the music of Middle Earth sounds like, and he has put his own spin on a lot of the stuff. Like, you can tell it's different enough that you feel like he didn't just copy and paste, but he still is staying within those parameters, so it still feels like the established music of Middle Earth with its own thing to it. Yeah, I think he's done exceptionally well. He had very big shoes to fill, and it was a very tall order, and I think he's knocked it out of the park.
He's doing a great job. So then we go to Celebrimbor and Sauron, who's posing as Anatar at this point, invite Prince Durin and Princess Disa to Eregion and reveal their plan to create the Rings of Power for the dwarves. I have one question about this scene. Why is Disa there? Why is it not Prince Durin and his dad?
My theory is
DEI. No, I'm sorry.
My theory is they believe that Durin and Disa are going to be easier to manipulate.
Okay.
Because they even ask, like, why are we here and not our king? Like, why are you not presenting this to our king? And Celebrimbor says something to the effect of, he's a little set in his ways. And so I think they were like, there's absolutely no way. And Durin the Third is like, even in season 1, he referenced a couple times how he doesn't trust the elves and like all this. So they were like, we got an in already, kind of, because Durin the Fourth and Elrond are friends. Like, if we have a chance of like getting this in there, it's probably going to be with these cats and not with old man.
Okay. Fair. I feel better about it. So
there were 2 things in this scene that I liked. One, there's a little bit of a subtle power struggle between Anatar and Celebrimbor. I've really liked that, where they Disa and Durin were like, could we have some time to mull it over? And Anatar immediately is like, I'm afraid we don't have. And Celebrimbor is like, yes, of course, take all the time you need. And it's like, okay, Celebrimbor has the upper hand now. Well, then they go to the whole thing where Anatar is like, oh, but what about your High King? And like kind of flips the script on there, like he's trying to gain the upper hand again. Like, I really liked the subtle manipulation and like power struggle of the minds essentially there. I thought that was well done.
I would agree. Because so then Durin the Fourth does not trust Anatar and reluctantly brings the proposal to King Durin the Third, who eventually agrees to give the elves the mithril they need to create more rings. In Numenor, we see many citizens express their disapproval of Muriel's ascension to the throne following the death of her father, King Tar Palantir. This is due to her decision to go to Middle Earth, which led to so many deaths and also led to her blindness. Lord Belzegar counsels Muriel's cousin Pharazôn to claim the throne for himself. Pharazôn is concerned that there is not enough public support for such a move, until Elendil's daughter, who, if I'm not mistaken, is made up for the show, right?
Correct.
Yep. Elendil's daughter, Arian, reveals that she was... Arian has stolen Muriel's Palantir, and it rolls across the floor in dramatic fashion. Or wait, that happens later. All of a sudden in episode 3, we come back to Numenor, and we get a Cliff Notes version of a story that should take 3 or 4 episodes to fully flesh out.
Yep.
It is so fast. It could be one of these, again, Game of Thrones palace intrigue things unfolding.
Here's what makes me so mad about this. They did what I think was an excellent job in season 1 of establishing Pharazôn and his political authority. Like, the way that he could just like walk into a room and immediately just command the room. The way he could take an angry mob and immediately flip them, and like now all of a sudden everybody's on his side and cheering his name. Like, they did a really good job of establishing the way that he could work his way in there. And so to have it go down like this seems like a total waste. Like what were you establishing that for if it was just going to be like all in one big moment, like, now all of a sudden, that's very disappointing.
So we agree on that, because I felt like a lot of season 1 was setting this up.
Yeah.
And then we don't talk about it for 2 episodes, and then we get here and it's over so fast. And there's not a lot of drama behind it. It's really, really quick.
Yep, I thought it was a waste of what they did.
I believe we had a fairly good scene at a bar when they're plotting this scene.
Yeah.
And I thought that scene was pretty good. And that's why I say, like, we should have taken 2 or 3 episodes to expand on this and not just rush into it. So
I really liked when Valandil walked over to the table and basically, like, put Farazan's son in his place. Like, I liked that.
Farazan's son looks like he stepped right out of the 70s paintings of any fantasy novel, because he's got that terrible haircut. Yeah. He just looks so stupid. Anyways, so leaving Mordor, Isildur comes across a young woman named Estrid. And it's the beginning of the end for Isildur, because now a woman has entered his view, and that's... I have a lot of thoughts on Astrid. On their way back, so this was one that I actually had to look up. Isildur's wife is never named.
Correct. Katie asked me that when we were watching it. She was like, who does Isildur wife? And I was like, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Tolkien didn't do a great job of naming women. Just in general, like, he'll tell you who the kings were and all that. He didn't do a great job of telling you who they married.
Yep. And that was my immediate thought seeing her. I was like, all right, because the way it happened, I was like, this is such a stupid meet cute in Middle Earth that I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be Aragorn's relative, but okay. Right. So on their way to Pelargir, an old Númenórean colony, they are attacked by wild men who steal Beric. The pair are saved by the elf Arondir, our first time seeing him since season 1. In Pelargir, I'm messing that up, Arondir holds a funeral for Bronwyn, the human healer he fell in love with in season 1, who succumbed to her injuries from the battle before the eruption of the volcano.
Which was super yada-yada'd.
Okay, you thought so too?
Yes. I was like, we had everything season 1 great. She was a key character.
Yep. Write her out.
And it's like, and now she's dead.
Yep. Gone.
What? What?
So, in the behind the scenes, she didn't return. She chose not to come back to the show. So they're kind of stuck then. Recast her.
They had to write her off somehow. I get it.
Recast her like they did with Adar, or write her out. And they chose to write her out, which is unfortunate because she was actually one of my favorites from season 1. I liked her more than I liked Arondir.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get left with the lesser of the two from that storyline, in my opinion. So now I'm just checked out of the storyline. But I actually liked Bronwyn a little bit. So we get this, like, funeral pyre scene that is just, again, real quick, brushed over, and then Theo dismisses Arondir's attempts to comfort him. He's all, like, pissed off now, like, I don't know, he's just an angsty teenage boy. And
here's the thing, I didn't
cover his My Chemical Romance shirt with his robe.
I wanted to be annoyed by Theo and his reaction to all this, but I was like, that's probably how a 15-year-old boy would respond to his mom dying. Like,
yeah,
that's probably right.
He delivers a line that I again thought was them trying to emulate Tolkien, but this was it's a little bit cringy, but it's one of the better ones. When Theo tells Arondir that everything you were to me is ashes now. And I was like, it's a little bit cheesy, but also I think it was more the delivery that was cheesy.
And then he immediately followed it up with, "For my part, we never have to speak again." And that also is they were trying with that one. We'll give them credit for trying.
They were trying. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I'm not saying I loved it. I did like the "everything you are to me is ashes." That's pretty good. I wish Theo delivered it a little better. So Bronwyn's dead. Theo does what he does. I'm trying to find where I was because it's the middle of the paragraph. So Isildur bonds with Estrid over the deaths of their respective loved ones as they come to this fire that's outside city walls. And I just loved. This was one that, like, I'm not real critical in the acting. I think for the most part it's okay. But I just noticed in this scene, Isildur comes up to that fire and just immediately, like, sticks his hands out to... does that classic, like, oh yeah, warming my hands by the fire thing. Like, that's a little on the nose there, but it was just one of those subtle things that was like, have you ever actually sat around a fire?
Right.
Theo and Isildur attempt to steal Beric back from the wild men and almost succeed until Theo is attacked along with the wild men. So we kind of get some mysterious happenings. Theo recruits Isildur to go get Beric back. I'm not sure why Theo cares.
Right.
So that's my why.
My only guess is, like, he looks up, like, he thinks Isildur is really cool and wants to, like, impress him or something. Like, that's the only thought that I had.
You're way cooler than Arondir, who I watched, like, do a triple backflip and dismember orcs earlier, but whatever.
I found myself in a very unfortunate spot at the end of episode 3. I was like, I kind of care less about Theo and Isildur right now than I did in all of season 1. Like, we took a step backwards.
I completely agree. I'm glad you said that.
We're supposed to be moving forward. Like you said, like, as we spend more time with these characters, we're supposed to care more about them. We're supposed to become more invested in them. And at the end of episode 3, I was like, I kind of care less about these guys now than I did at the beginning of this season.
I was disappointed. So we had a 3-episode premiere, and I thought the first 2 were the better of the 3. And part of that is because I just realized at the end of this episode that I care less about Isildur, who I was really intrigued by in season 1. I mean, he is a key named character of Lord of the Rings.
He plays a huge role.
Yes, he is a massive part of the story.
Yeah.
And so I was very interested in where it would go. And he just comes across as kind of, I mean, he's young, yes, but I'm actually at this point missing Elendil, who I thought was fantastic in season 1.
Loved Elendil in season 1.
And I'm like, man, I want Elendil here to, like, comfort or console, like, teach Isildur, but we're not getting that. So then Theo and Isildur are attacked in the woods. We don't exactly see what's attacking them. It cuts, but we come to Muriel's coronation. So we cut back to Numenor. And Arian, what was her name?
You'll need to unlock your iPad.
Aarian, yeah, not Arian. Aarian reveals the Palantir, which causes outrage among the people who are widely against Numenor's old elvish ways. And then, for some reason, an eagle arrives at the coronation, a rare and powerful omen for the new ruler. However, Belzegar claims that the eagle's presence signifies support for Pharazôn instead. And again, this is like the Numenor stuff is it's bad. We spent season 1 setting up this storyline and this palace coup stuff for it to happen in a grand total of maybe 15 minutes of this episode.
Yep.
And then, spoiler alert, because we're about to talk about episode 4, it doesn't come up again in episode 4.
Yeah, we're just gonna be hanging out here on this branch until at least episode 5.
at least, maybe later, because this is a moment that I start to think the writers don't know what to do with it. They are like, crap. At the end of these 3 premiere episodes, so that's the end of episode 3. At the end of these 3, I am left thinking and feeling, probably more accurately feeling, that these writers are not writing these storylines like Galadriel from the beginning of season 2 to the end of season 2. They're not writing Isildur from the beginning of season 2 to the end of season 2. I feel like they're writing episode 1. And then they write episode 2.
Okay.
Because I'm starting to feel like they're disconnected, and I'm not, because there's not enough, like the stories kind of wrap up in each episode. It's not episodic like an old sitcom, but we're not left with like a scene that doesn't make sense within the confines of that episode, because you need to see the one before it and after it to understand it to a greater degree, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it a longer story pieced together over these episodes. I'm seeing episode 2, episode 3, and kind of progression like, hey, we're not going to have Isildur in this episode, so don't write that. And then we just pick up on it later. And it just feels a little bit disconnected. Yeah. And it's at this point, I was starting to get a little bit upset. So I will say what I said. I thought episodes 1 and 2 were an improvement over season 1. This episode, I didn't have the greatest time with leaving it. There were things I liked, things I didn't. The Numenor stuff was baffling to me. Why we would spend so much time setting it up. Pretty good job in season 1.
Yeah.
And then just kind of rushing through it now. So I was very disappointed by that. And like you said, by the end of this episode, Isildur is like one step above Nori and Poppy for me. Like, don't really care. And I'm going to be honest, since we're about to dive into episode 4 makes it worse for me. So we'll see. But yeah, your thoughts on episode 3?
I probably felt similarly. I mean, I took fewer notes on episode 3 than I did on episodes 1 or 2. And that tells me there was just a lot less that stood out to me. I guess for good or for bad. But like, yeah, episode 3 felt kind of meh. And yeah, I mean, I already stated there was the one storyline where I'm like, we took a step backwards here for me. So that storyline, I ended up caring less about the characters at the end than I cared about them at the beginning. And then, yeah, you already said the Numenorian thing seems very poorly mismanaged. So yeah, I would say I was overall similar to you.
Bryce, are you caught up on it?
Sorry, what show are we talking about again?
Bryce is watching football, guarantee.
Yeah.
So
the Packers game is on your other monitor. Don't try and pretend it's not.
It's on there. I got fantasy teams to worry about. And I'll tie that into exactly one of my notes that I put for this episode, which
I'd
was...
rather be watching football.
One of them was I stopped paying attention to the show about halfway through this episode and started joining like some fantasy pools to start to just do a couple leagues and pick some wins for the games this Sunday. So as the casual fan, I don't enjoy criticizing and going hard on movies and TV shows. I don't find joy in it at all. I know. Like talking about this show 4 episodes in a row, and the fact that I had to fit 4 episodes in a row this week alone.
That was your choice.
Hey, listen.
How you manage your time is your responsibility.
Hold on. I do this because I care about you guys and I want to be involved with what you guys enjoy too. Okay,
he's a sweet boy.
I'm a sweet guy. All right, I'm a great guy. But this was the episode where I am done making excuses for a show that I think is objectively bad at this point. The first season I could get behind simply for the fact that I enjoyed Lord of the Rings. I may not be the biggest fan like you guys are, but I'm willing to give it the space to grow into its own. Like I said, the first half of season 1 I did not enjoy. I thought it was really slow and did not have a lot of stuff going on that intrigued me enough to keep going. Second half of the season pulled me back in. I enjoyed it. I thought, okay, I'm willing to stick around for season 2 and see what happens.
Do you know why a boat floats and a rock sinks?
Yeah, exactly.
You get it.
Yeah, of course. I understand exactly what you said. This is the point of the show now where I can no longer make any excuse. I don't care if there's little things that I have enjoyed. There's two positives I have taken away from this show up to this point. Season episode 3. Like you said, Caleb, the music is really good. Like it is borderline, basically like, all right, this is like Lord of the Rings, like standard of music. It sounds really good. It fits. I love everything about it, especially the orc metal. Like that was one of my notes. I just put orc metal. That's all I needed to put in there.
What more do you need?
I think that's an improvement on what Howard Shore did, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second thing I said was second consistent good thing I said was that, to what Tim said, that Charlie Vickers as Hellbrand makes the character entertaining enough that it keeps, whenever he's on screen, he commands my attention.
Yes.
I'm willing to sit there, get off my phone, do whatever I'm doing. That's led me to that point and be like, oh, he's back on screen. Let's see what he does here.
He's got this malicious twinkle in his eye that I am here for.
And the thing, and again, back to what I said about the earlier episodes, like I don't even think I'm in love with what they're doing with him as the main villain, but I know for a fact that of all these characters, he's the only character that I'm like half interested in seeing what happens, which goes to my next point of this is at this point the only storyline I care about. I do not give a darn about any other storyline at this point in the show. I am so uninterested in what's going on in the wannabe Game of Thrones storyline. To your point, I thought season 1 made that storyline. Sorry if I don't know the names of it. Season 1 made that storyline a lot more interesting than it is right now. My last note of episode 3 was, what even was the ending? So lost. So as a casual fan, it's kind of a big deal if these big pivotal moments are just lost in the missing context of what's supposed to be happening in these big pivotal moments. I am so frustrated with this show that I don't understand what is going on, who any of these characters are anymore, because we've taken such a pivot from what felt like a less than average but passable season 1 for, again, a casual fan who's willing to give this show a chance. And in episode 3 of season 2, I have just lost all respect and hope that this show is good at all. I think it is objectively a bad show at this point, and I'm just waiting for Sauron to just take over and start the Great War. Like that's all I'm here for at this point. Also, where is all this money going for in this show? This show looks atrocious for how much money is getting poured into it.
See, I actually think the show looks good.
I don't think it looks good. For the amount of money that's gone into this show, it does not look good. You do not have many actors that are probably worth that much money to where this money should not be poured into the practical effects and special effects of this show.
I don't know. Like the fact that Lord of the Rings did that A24 movie, She Commands.
The fact that these Lord of the Rings movies still, and again, testament to how great they are, but the fact that you have this much money and you can't, and this show just does not hold a candle to how great those movies look. I personally have an issue with that. The few shots that look good are the very big landscape shots that they give you. Those shots do look good. I will say that. But like I said, the green screen looks atrocious. The CGI, for the most part, has looked cartoony and out of place in this show for a fantasy show of all things. The costume designs are just getting like just I don't even know the word how to describe it. It's just outlandish for this show. Like it looks more like Hunger Games to me than it does Lord of the Rings at this point. Like I don't understand. I don't understand what we're doing. Like, what do we know what we're wanting to do with this show? And to your point, Tim, I don't think the writers know what they want to do anymore. I think that they are just trying to make these like pins go to each other because at least with, like I said, I'm watching Game of Thrones right now, so this is really hard for me to sit down and like find good things to say about this show, and that's whatever. I'll admit that. But at least with Game of Thrones, even though I know how it ends, I am seeing the stories moving to a collision course. I see them all where they will meet up eventually. Like at least the threads are connecting, and I'm following a story here.
And the dialogue is sharp in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, dialogue is sharp. Again, two very different shows. This one, I have no clue what is going on outside of the fact of I know that these certain characters are part of the Lord of the Rings lore, and so I know eventually what happens to them in the Lord of the Rings movies. I know where that's going. I don't know where we're going right now with them. I'm lost. I'm confused. I'm scared.
I brought out the soapbox and Bryce climbed right on top of it.
He box jumped onto that thing.
Sorry, I've been silent this whole time because I'm just letting you guys. I'm letting you guys say what you need to say about it, because I knew coming into this review I was going to probably be the only one who would be as negative as I am being about this show, because I understand as Lord of the Rings fans. 10
minutes to tell us your thoughts.
Exactly. I understand as Lord of the Rings fans, you guys want this show to be good, and because it's like your thing. I get that. As a Star Wars fan, I really wanted the sequel trilogy to be good, but at a certain point, I had to admit to myself, these movies suck. And as much as I wanted Force Awakens to be good, I don't have any way to defend this movie because everything that comes after it is bad, and it's just a ripoff of Episode 4. I know, Tim, we disagree on that part, but it's not the conversation we're having.
I also like TFA.
Yeah. But I'm trying to sympathize with the fact, like, I don't want to just bash this show, but I'm running out of reasons and excuses to defend any good things they are doing, because there can be shows and movies that do good things, but if the other 80 to 90% of this show is just bad, I don't know what to say. I'm watching the show because I want to review it with you guys, and I want to be in that world that you guys are in. And
if we all agree, it's so fun to listen to.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry.
I agree with you on 2 points.
I will step down now.
I agree with you on 2 points about the show looking bad. I don't think it looks bad, like you said.
It looks bad for the amount of money that they've invested in this show, and
here's where I'm going to agree with you on that statement.
Yes, that was my statement. More than it just looks straight bad. I think it still looks bad.
I'm disappointed that the only scene that we've gotten where the camera is outside the city and then pans into is with Casa Doom. We get so many. This is a frustration because it's one of those things that makes me realize they're filming on sets and it takes me out of the moment. But we get so many postcard moments of like, hey, here's the city with the name in the bottom corner, and then the next scene they're inside.
Yeah, it's not worth even acknowledging if everything else doesn't even match that. Like, that's the point I'm trying to make is, these moments look good, but they're 5-second moments in a hour episode, and it doesn't stack up to the rest of the bad stuff that I'm seeing. I don't understand why we can't like put that same effort into at least your set pieces.
Well, there are things that I would like to see as far as that production side goes that I think would help. Where, like, if we're going into the Elvish City and we start with that postcard moment, like, have the camera pan in and come down on a crowd. Totally. So it feels populated. It feels larger. I don't feel like I'm cutting to a set. Those are those are nitpicky. It is one of those things in movies. It's really bad in these high budget TV shows. It happens in the Marvel shows, the Star Wars shows. It's happening in this, where we have a set piece that feels disconnected from a greater world. That is one thing I've noticed in a lot of productions lately. So that is one complaint I have against it. Other than that, I thought the sets themselves actually look very, very good. I've thought the costumes, I've had zero complaints about the costumes so far till we get to episode 4.
Well, and to defend myself at least on that comment, I think the issue is that I'm so checked out of all these stories at this point that I've started looking at those things. Like I'm starting to notice like those other things because I'm not paying attention to story as much anymore because I don't know what's going on. And because I'm not paying attention to the story and investing in that unless it's Sauron, I'm starting to notice the set pieces. I'm starting to notice all these characters that they've put in the backgrounds. Like I'm noticing these little holes that they've left out, and just in my eyes, it just looks like low effort that's been put in to a show that's been given so much money to spend on what is supposed to be Amazon's Game of Thrones, per Mr. Bezos himself.
Yeah. The other thing that I agree with you on is I notice the director is not as good at handling shots with the hobbits as Peter Jackson was.
No, I agree. I totally agree with that.
So there are quite a few moments. It's not bad, but there are quite a few moments where I do notice like size discrepancies of like, yes, we'll have a shot from above to make him look taller than the hobbits. But then like the next shot, what she was standing next to is the same size as it was next to him. So there's just a little bit there. Outside of that, I don't think I can agree with you on the show looking terrible. I do. There are some things that I wish. I almost think it's more of a director thing because I was impressed when we go from Khazad-dûm and we're going outside and we see those doors and we see the two statues of the dwarves and then we go in through the windows. I was like, this is awesome. Why can't we get that at Eregion? You know, why can't we have that at the Forge? Why can't we start at the outside and zoom in and see the Forge? Like, put some of it into that. So I'm gonna meet you like a quarter of the way on that one. But yep. See, the thing is, we got
one more episode still. Damn it.
Yeah, I have more to say about this one because you fell off on episode 3. Spoiler alert, I fell off on episode 4.
That's so bad.
Well, then let's get in.
All right. Episode 4 opens after a lack of correspondence from Celebrimbor in Eregion. Galadriel and Elrond set about putting together a small group of archers and swordsmen to head towards the Elven realm. Upon they just discuss. I assume you know like 2 archers and a swordsman? Yeah, I know 2 archers and a swordsman. And that's the scene. And then upon discovering the bridge is down, Galadriel and Elrond discuss which path to take next. In a scene that reminds me, it's going to happen a lot in this episode, by the way. It's going to remind you of a lot of other things. This scene reminds me of a moment when a particular band of travelers finds themselves on top of a snowy mountain, and they have to decide which route to take next. One route is more dangerous. And it just reminds me of that. Galadriel and Elrond discuss which path to take next. Galadriel's ring, Nenya, shows her a vision of evil laying in wait to the south. Nevertheless, Elrond decides to head south despite the protestations of Galadriel. We go over to Rune, where the stranger is still looking for Nori and Poppy after his mess up of a tornado, which separated the trio. Instead,
I wondered if you were going to be how you would feel about that. I learned just today about this specific person.
You never read the books, did you?
No, but I knew who it was. I just didn't realize. I didn't recognize the name, so I talked to my coworker and he filled me in. And I was like, "Oh, that guy."
The stranger chances upon Tom Bombadil. Legendary for those of us that have read the books. This is a huge moment. Huge moment. A quiet hermit who speaks in riddles and cryptic truths. Do I want to tell you what I feel about him now since he's kind of sprinkled throughout the show?
I want to hear what both of you have to say because I felt like this was supposed to be that big reveal and I had no clue what was going on. I just knew he said Tom in a way that was like, that's a Marvel character telling you who they are. So fill me in.
Well, what's fun, I got this from Nerd of the Rings. This actor was in James Bond, and he introduces himself as Bombadil, Tom Bombadil. So that's a cheesy little moment. However, okay, my general, after watching this whole episode, how I feel about Tom Bombadil. Why? 2, I'm not opposed to it. I don't have a problem with him existing and being in this story. I don't. I do have a problem with him repurposing a chapter from Fellowship of the Rings to tell the story. And not just one chapter, we get 2, and they change the characters. So we get Tom with the stranger, and then we get the Borrow Downs with the elves. In what is a retelling of what was missing from Peter Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring.
Yep.
That's my problem with it. I don't have a problem with Tom. I actually thought they did a fairly decent job with Tom. I kind of liked him. He was not quite as colorful and flamboyant as I pictured him in the books. He's a little more joyful in the books. Outside of that, I thought his dialogue, well, it was pretty good because it was pulled straight from that chapter in Fellowship of the Ring. So, Caleb, what did you think of it? That's my... I was excited to see him. I don't have a problem with him existing in the story. I just have a problem with how they did it.
Okay. I liked Tom Bombadil. I thought they did a good job of representing the character that we see in Fellowship of the Ring, like 85%, maybe 90%. I liked his dialogue. I thought the way he was just very like flippant about a lot of stuff was spot on. Like old Tom doesn't really care. Like he's just here vibing, man. Like, so I thought they got the essence of Tom Bombadil pretty well. The problems that I had was towards the end of his exchange with the stranger. He starts talking like real serious about like, oh, you're going to have to face both the wizard and Sauron. And it's like, Tom Bombadil doesn't care about any of that.
No, exactly.
Now, the small license that I could make an argument for is we're getting second age Tom Bombadil, not the end of the third age Tom Bombadil.
Before he's fully apathetic.
Yes. So it's entirely possible that like he's younger. He's the eldest, he's been around since the beginning of time, essentially. So that part, that's cool. I can dig it. So it's possible that just like the end of the third age, Tom Bombadil just doesn't care at all anymore. He's just vibing with Goldberry and like doesn't give a care for the trials of the world. Maybe second age, like middle of the second age, Tom Bombadil like still cares a little bit, like he's still a little more involved. I didn't love that they kind of put him in that position, but outside of that, overall, I liked Tom.
How'd you feel about Goldberry? That was weird.
That was a little weird.
That was weird. Okay.
Katie said the same thing. She was like, I was really excited to see Goldberry, and then there wasn't actually any Goldberry. And I was like, well, we'll hold off. We'll see if maybe later in the season we get actual Goldberry. But yeah, that was kind of weird.
A straight up denial of her existence. Like I heard a woman's voice. It's just me. What?
Did he say it's just me? Or did he say, well, you're here? Aren't you?
Yeah, that's true.
Like, he flipped it. And that's what I loved. I loved that he did speak in riddles. He never gave a straight answer.
Yes.
He was very...
Tom Bombadil.
He was very Tom Bombadil. So I thought they captured his essence well. Overall, I have a slight complaint, but overall I thought they did well with Tom Bombadil. I'm excited to see more of him.
I am too. My biggest complaint is the repurposing of something that's very familiar to fans of the book for this.
You wish it was a little more original and not necessarily just like, we know this got left out of the movie, so we're going to put it in here. Oh,
even to the stranger getting sucked into the tree, just like the Hobbit. Like,
it was Old Man Ironwood instead of Old Man Willow, but come on now.
Yeah, a little derivative there. Okay.
Yeah.
So he changes upon Tom Bombadil, a quiet hermit who speaks in riddles and cryptic truths. There's what you're searching for, and there's what you find, ain't there? Bombadil says. Good line. Pretty sure that's lifted from the Fellowship, but the stranger's quick conversation with Tom Bombadil is cut short after his map is swept away and into a living tree. I hate this chasing the map thing. It just reminds me of like
really.
It just reminds me of like kids' movies when they're like, "Oh, I'm trying to catch the whatever."
Yeah.
It's into a living tree named Old Man Ironwood, but bearing a striking resemblance to Old Man Willow from the Fellowship, which swallows the stranger after his map is caught in the branch. Tom later rescues the stranger and introduces himself, makes a bath for the stranger. The stranger hears old Tom singing with a woman, but he says there's no one else in his home. Tom Bombadil also explains that he's the eldest and was seemingly on Middle Earth even before there were stars, rivers, and trees. That's cool. This is a moment, I do like him. This is a moment that I feel should be a little bit grander than it is, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. The stranger asks for help on wielding a staff, and Tom replies that a staff, like a name, is yours to wield already if you prove yourself worthy of it. And then he kind of like, which you didn't do last night, which I thought was kind of funny. But the stranger then comes to the realization that he was never meant to find the stars on his map, but in fact to find Tom Bombadil. Which is what you were getting to, I think, at the end about him kind of guiding the stranger.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how I feel.
Not a fan. Yeah, I don't like the whole, it wasn't the stars. I was supposed to find you. Like, why would the Valar be like, yeah, when you get there, go hit up Tom Bombadil. He'll let you know what you're supposed to. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I did not like that one bit.
He's going to sing a song, Merry Dole, Derry Dole, and it'll all make sense. Yeah, so Tom also reveals that the Dark Wizard once came to his hut, also seeking help from him. So I wasn't sure how I felt about that exactly either. Elsewhere, in the desert region of Rune, Nori and Poppy are lost and alone, and they bump into a Harfoot-like person wearing one of the worst costumes I have seen in this entire show.
Just the whole the hair, the costume, like, that was pretty rough.
It's rough. It's bad. It's a Harfoot-like person who's named Nobody or Merrimack, which just makes me question that whole, well, I guess some people call me Merrimack, but they also call me Nobody. It doesn't really make sense. Sorry. Merrimack is also actually a Hobbit we know has a relative named Merrimack, doesn't it? Do you know Hobbit?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it Pippin?
I don't remember.
No. I think it's Mary.
Is it Mary? Does Mary have like a cousin?
I think it's
Meriadoc and Mary Mac?
Yes, I think it's Brandybuck lineage.
Yeah, that sounds right.
After accidentally revealing that he's heading back to the village with stolen water, the trio band together and head to the store's dwellings. Side note, this is one of the moments where the landscape they are standing in did not look proportional to Hobbit size. This is one of those moments that I was like, they look full size standing next to that desert shrubbery. There they meet Gundabel, the leader of the Stewards. Nori tells him about tells her about the stranger, but Gundabel believes Gundabel believes Nori is a friend of the mysterious Dark Wizard. So the So then we cut to the masked men who are with the Dark Wizard, and he says he will see to the stranger himself while they should pursue the Harfoots. Really quick scene. So then we go to the south, Galadriel.
So, quick question.
Yes.
If the stranger has been separated from the Harfoots, why does the Dark Wizard care about the Harfoots anymore?
That's what we call plot armor. He cares because they're part of the story. Otherwise, he would not whatsoever.
Yeah, like the entire thing was, we'll use the Harfoots in order to get the Istar to come here. But like they've been separated now, so like what interest does he have in the Harfoots now? It doesn't make any sense.
No, he shouldn't care about them whatsoever. I don't care about them whatsoever. Honestly, the Stoors are one of Tolkien's early Hobbit predecessors. What I thought was, if you're following deep Tolkien lore, the Stoors in this they all tend to be a little darker skinned, which in Tolkien lore, the Harfoots were the ones who were more like this. But the Stoors are in the correct region, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm willing to just spend some of that. I think it's kind of cool seeing some ancient hobbits. However, this is one shot where we do get some nice aerial play.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yep. We get some nice aerial play. I was watching this. I was like, this is good. We're getting some fleshed out scenery here. I'm okay with it.
Yep. That was a good shot.
Yep. I did like that. So we go
I
to
like that we're getting more halflings, because if you look at the race of hobbits as we see it in the Third Age, there are 3 predecessors to the hobbits. So there are 3 like people groups of halflings that eventually, which might make sense to talk about this a little later, eventually move to the Shire and have their like main area where they live there. So there's the Harfoots, which we've met already. There's the Stoors, which we just met. And there's the Fallowhides, which we might meet. I don't know.
At this point, I'm going to say we will, because we've met the other 2.
I was going to say, if it wouldn't make sense for them to introduce 2 of them, but not the 3rd.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of fun to see more like old school halflings. I think it's kind of fun.
I'm actually cool with that. Don't really have any issues with that, other than the fact that like I just wish I cared about how we got here, I should say. So we go from that. In the south, Galadriel, Elrond, and their squad encounter whites in the Barrow Downs, where the lords and kings were laid to rest. There they discover Gil-galad's dispatch to Eregion, so that letter he was sending to Celebrimbor telling him not to trust Halbrand, was stopped right here by the whites. The whites were the ones, the Barrow Whites were the ones who killed his messengers and wrapped them in chains. Issues with this scene?
I kind of liked it.
I thought it was cool.
It was a little creepy.
Yeah.
It was
gave me Pirates of the Caribbean vibes, honestly.
Okay.
My biggest issue is that, like, technically the Barrow Whites didn't exist, but there's a little bit of gray area on that, and they kind of address it like Galadriel says he may have awakened them.
They smudge the timelines on various things pretty significantly in this show. Yeah. So in the interest of storytelling, I guess I can forgive that, but yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that.
So the only other real issue I have with it is that it immediately follows the Tom Bombadil storyline. Which it does.
Like, hey, remember that thing from Fellowship of the Ring? How about this thing from Fellowship of the Ring?
It takes the literal 2 back-to-back chapters from Fellowship of the Ring that did not make it into the movie. And it separates them by a 5-minute scene with Harfoots and puts the Tom Bombadil with the stranger, and then it puts the Barrow Whites with the elves. And that is my big issue with it. It's yet another scene to remind us of something better. It's another scene to remind us of something better. Even the way he was like, oh, only the sword they're buried with can kill them. I thought that was cool. The action was cool. I was all for that scene. But the way they did the sword, because that's where the hobbits get their swords in the book.
Yep.
And so that's where I was like, oh, that's another repurposing, basically, of what happened in the book.
Just another tie-in.
Yeah, and that's where I was starting to get a little bit frustrated with it. However, I'm still like, that's my problem with this episode in particular, is I love all of these things. I like seeing all of these things. I wish it was written better. I wish it was written better. So that's where I'm at on that. So they fight the Borrowites. They kill them with the swords they're buried with. The search for Theo continues, with Estrad's knowledge of the area taking the party north. After they confronted Arondir, or after being confronted by Arondir, Estrad attacks the elf and attempts to flee. She is quickly caught, and Arondir shows off a burn, a self-inflicted wound that hides the mark of Adar. So he knows that this is just another thing where, like, she covered it at the end of the previous episode, that she was a person for Sauron. And then again, it's immediately revealed in the next episode. And it's not like this lingering threat of suspense. It's, hey, we know. And then
we established that we maybe can't trust her at the end of episode 3. And then halfway through episode 4, we get a payoff to that.
Yep. And Isildur is still like all hot for her. Doesn't matter. After he spent... I hate Isildur and Estrad in this episode. Because immediately after it's revealed that he can't trust her, he's all like, I'm so stupid. Like, you're just so pretty, and I wanted to believe everything you said. And I just, like, oh, I'm such an idiot. And then the first chance he gets, he, like, goes in to kiss her, and she pulls the sword on him.
Yep.
And I'm just like, you were just talking.
Will be the night that I will fall for you.
You were just talking about how mad you were that you trusted her, and then you immediately go to trust her again, and she pulls the sword on you.
Look, man, even in Middle Earth, there is no power greater than the power of boners.
It's true. I guess it's true. It's true.
Universally, there is no greater power.
Oh, it was just so cringy. But yeah.
There's one thing that can defeat Sauron.
This is a woman.
A woman's touch.
So yeah, shows off the burn. They later scour the area where Theo might be, but Arondir and Isildur are attacked by a creature in a scene right from the Never-Ending Story. They're pulled right into the mud.
I actually had the exact same thought as it was happening. I was like, this is the swamp of, what was it? The swamp of desperation? No.
Swamp of Sadness.
Yeah, Swamp of Sadness.
Yep. Swamp of Sadness.
Like, we just need a horse to die in this scene, and then it's a direct cut.
I can't handle that scene. That might have been sad, but and then we get this, like, it's a pretty cool looking snake bony thing comes up, and then Arondir quotes, or should we say Gandalf later quotes Arondir when he says that there are nameless things in the deep
places.
Yes. So
yep.
But then doesn't he just make up a name for that thing, like, right on the spot, like 5 seconds later?
No, he doesn't name it. He just says a nameless thing in the deep places, and that's...
I thought he named it.
Does he?
Yeah, no, like literally 5 seconds after he calls it by like a name.
Oh, Bryce, you were not paying attention to the show at this point.
I could have sworn that's exactly
what
he
says, but we'll call it dinner.
Yeah, he says we'll call it dinner.
Okay,
Like-
maybe I misheard him because I was
going to eat it.
I was watching.
No,
it on,
you were dicking
I
around
was
on your
watching-
phone
no,
because,
I was
as
watching it on-
previously
I
stated,
was watching
you
it
said
on
you've
my
totally
phone.
checked
I
out
had
at this
headphones
point.
in. I misheard him because I was literally watching it
He was
on my
checking his
phone.
fantasy football.
No, it was on my phone, and I had a headphone in, and I was listening to it, so I just misheard him.
No, but he quotes, "This is another moment that I'm taken to the mines of Moria in Fellowship of the Ring," and Gandalf says something about the nameless things in the deep, about the Watcher at the gates. And it's just another one of those moments where this is the big crime of this episode for me.
I was gonna say I'm getting a very clear picture as to why you hated this episode so much. It kept calling back to
something
things
better
that you like better than this.
Yes, that is my problem with this episode. It puts in a bunch of, for lack of a better term, fan service that it's not so much a problem that it's there. It's just this much of it in one episode that does nothing else to further the story just reminded me of better movies and better books. Like, I'd rather go watch that. I'd rather go watch The Mines of Moria and then fight that tentacled beast outside of the gate and have Gandalf tell me about the nameless things in the deep places. You know, that's where I'd be. And then Galadriel's also guilty of quoting Gandalf in this episode. So we'll keep going. Back in Rune, Gundabel recounts the legend of a Burrows Harfoot who will lead the Stewars to a new prosperous land. Nori tells the Stewar leader that the legend isn't true, and instead the Harfoots kept wandering. So they have this legend that a Stewar went to go, basically, anybody watching this is going to put this together. The Stewar went to go find the Shire.
Yep.
And then Nori is there to bring the sad news that they never found it. They're still wandering. So all of a sudden, we know where this storyline's headed. Like, there we go. We're going to find the Shire.
We're setting the groundwork here. Yep.
And all of a sudden, I'm starting to feel a little bit better about it. Because now I'm going somewhere. I still don't care. All of these people could die and another group of Harfoots could carry on and I'd be fine. But I'm starting to put the picture together and it's starting to feel
you got a little glimmer of hope there of, this actually could end up being a story, maybe not characters, but a story that I can care about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they are soon interrupted by the Dark Wizard's trackers, but Gundabel stands her ground and gets immediately smacked like a bitch to the ground. Without revealing Poppy and Nori's location, and sees them on their way. That they were there, and he like flashes this really big sword at her, and it's like, "Don't make me take off my mask," and then they leave. And again, like Caleb said earlier, why do they care about the Harfoots?
Why indeed?
That's what this scene left me with. They came in, they waved their swords around, and threatened to take off their masks and walked away. So
that hinted at something way cool. Maybe we'll get a payoff in a later episode, but tell me the story of why you're wearing a mask.
Exactly.
Don't just blue ball me with you want to know why we wear these masks. I don't want it to be you want to know how I got these scars and we never figure out the actual story.
Yep.
You're not Christopher Nolan, and this is not the Joker. You can't get away with that.
Right.
Yeah, if we don't get a resolution to that, I'm going to be really mad. So
and maybe we complained about payoffs coming too soon in this show already. So maybe it'll be something that we get the first hint at in episode 4, and then in episode 8 we get a payoff for. I'm good with that. That's fine.
I might be all right with that at this point. So we go back while discussing the Rings of Power again, because that's all Galadriel and Elrond's relationship is at this point. We also get this. I actually thought it was a pretty cool shot, but I'm not sure what the heck it was about, of the sword in the ground, and then 3 elves posed like they're being painted. Oh yeah, just stand there. Good. I'm going to get the painting, and then it just keeps panning back, and then we get Elrond and Galadriel having a conversation. I was like,
Yeah.
cool shot. Don't know why you were all standing around like it was something ceremonial, but
Right.
okay. So that was cool. They have a conversation about the rings, and Galadriel implores Elrond to put opposing Sauron above all, including her own life. And Elrond's like, absolutely, that's my stance this whole time. Then Estrid, so cutting back to Isildur, attempts to betray Isildur. Wait, surprise! You didn't see that coming. This is after he tries to kiss her, and she pulls the sword. Who says he will protect her from those wishing to cast her out. She pulls his sword out, holds it to him, and then you hear a bow being pulled, and you see Arondir, who's standing off in the distance, and he has her in his sights, and she's like, oh shit. And then this is where we get Ents and Entwives. Because in an episode full of callbacks to other things from other Lord of the Rings, why not put Ents and Entwives in?
Let's get one more shot in there.
Actually, I was excited to see this. And this is probably the part that I have the least issue with in this episode. I probably have the least issue with it, other than the Entwife clearly has PTSD. Aaron,
Big time.
She's just smashing people. Have you ever chopped wood? Yes. Dead.
Right.
Arondir eventually pacifies them by asking for forgiveness for how the people of Middle-earth have treated the land. It is also revealed that the Ents were the one holding Theo. And we went from Theo at the end of episode 3 telling Arondir that everything between them is ashes, helping Isildur get Beric back and getting kidnapped, and then he was kidnapped by the Ents, and now he's free of the Ents, and everything's good with Arondir and Theo again. Or just, oh, I'm so glad to see you.
They were just one traumatic experience away from rebuilding that friendship.
This was one of the moments that I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
It was one of those.
I almost died. We're friends again now.
It's cool. Everything is no longer ashes between us. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. So that was one. I thought the Ents were actually pretty cool. I thought the Ent designs were pretty cool. Didn't really have as much an issue with that because we even knowing from the Two Towers movie that the Ents were more active in the past.
Yes.
So I was cool with it.
I talked about it a little bit with like the Stone Singers and their relationship with the mountain, relating that to elves and their relationship with the trees. So to see an elf interact with an Ent, I thought was pretty cool because like the elves go way back in like talking to trees, having like actual like friendships with these beings that are kind of sentient. Not really. The Ents obviously are sentient. Trees themselves are like kind of, yeah. So to have Arondir there to have that conversation and show a little bit of that elf Ent relationship, I thought that was pretty cool.
No, I thought that was cool too. Like I said, my biggest issue with the Ents was that it already came after a bunch of callbacks to the main trilogy that I was like, here's another one. I actually thought this was the best handled of all of them in this story. So I was okay with that. I'm fine with that one. So then we get to the end of the episode, final scene. Well, I should say again, this episode did nothing to make me care more about Isildur. In fact, I want to smack him in this episode from his constant, I hate this lover or enemies to lovers trope that they're playing with Estrid and Isildur. But the fact that it has flip-flopped 3 times in the 2 episodes that we've had them in. Like, oh, I love you. Oh, I'm an agent of Sauron. Ah, I hate that. But I can still love you if maybe, no, I'm still an agent. it's tired already. It's tired.
Well, and now we have the added thing of at the end of all that interaction, Theo and the other wild men got released, and her betrothed, whatever, is one of the wild men, and they go kiss. So now there's like a love triangle aspect to it. I don't care about any of this. Just skip.
Yep. I'm over all of that storyline already. And I think the actor is fine. The girl playing Astrid she's actually pretty good. I'm fine with it. I'm here for it. But the romance love triangle is ripped straight out of your worst young adult romantasy novel. And I'm
just over here like, when can we get to the point where Isildur does some really cool stuff? Because in the lore, he does some really cool stuff in the Second Age. And I'm like, can we just get to that, please?
Well, and I'm wondering what the heck, like, while all of this is going on, I'm like, so what happened at Numenor? Like, that's where Isildur should be headed. And there's major events that we talked about for 5 minutes in the other episode.
Yeah, like who's running the show over there now? What's that looking like?
So that, like, I'm watching this stupid romantasy play out and wishing I was getting more story.
Yeah.
That mattered. So after all that, the episode ends with the elves discussing Adar and the orcs marching on Eregion. And there's evidence of that through the trees. It's why the Ents were so riled up. I'm believing that awesome troll from the other episode was in there just smashing trees. I actually think we get a shot of him just push a tree over. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. But after one of the elven soldiers is hit by an arrow, it's kind of stupid, but I'm kind of okay with it. Like, the orcs were hunting a horse, and they miss so bad they kill an elf. They shoot an elf that was hiding. I was like, it's kind of ridiculous, but also I think it's kind of hilarious. It's like taking the joke of stormtroopers being unable to hit anything.
Yes. And
it's taking it one step further. Like, they're so bad, they missed the horse they were aiming at and hit the elf that was hiding.
It's like in if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, if you miss something badly enough, you will frequently like hit. So like if the three of us are in a party and I'm attacking like an orc or something, if I roll a critical fail and Bryce is also standing right next to it, I might hit Bryce because I missed that badly.
That's what happens.
So as a D&D player, I watched it and I was like, ooh, he just crit failed on that bow attack.
I didn't hate that, honestly. But then I'm not sure how I felt about Galadriel healing the wound.
You mean Rey Skywalker healing?
Yeah, force healing.
That looked like it was ripped straight out of Rise of Skywalker. That
was pretty much exactly what it was.
Exactly. That's exactly what I told myself. Like, oh my god, I'm watching Rise of Skywalker all over again.
It's also not something she's supposed to be able to do, right?
I think the inference, like, Nenya twinkled a little bit as she was doing that. And so I think the inference was the power of the ring is what healed the wound, not necessarily Galadriel. I don't like that anymore because Nenya is a ring of protection, not a ring of healing. So each of the three rings has a specific focus. And that ain't it. I don't really like that any better.
Keep giving me ammo, Caleb. Just keep giving me that ammo.
So I didn't think I didn't know about each ring having a specific purpose, but I'm pretty sure in this very show, in one of the earlier episodes, they talk about the rings enhancing the wearer's predispositions already. And that's why she started having visions. The more clear visions of the future. That's why when we see her in Fellowship of the Ring, she has those visions even clearer. She has the mirror there too. But
she also has the gift of foresight.
Well, that's what I'm saying. She has the gift of foresight, and I'm pretty sure they said the ring should enhance the gift of foresight, not the ability to heal an elf from.
Right. It doesn't give you like the shiny new powers.
Right. That's where my issue was with it.
Yeah,
but then,
I'm on board with that.
Okay. So she hands Elrond the ring and tells him to head to Lindon, while she deals with the orcs. And we get some pretty cool elf on orc action. I was okay with it.
Whoa, Tim.
No, elf on orc action.
Bryce, no kink shaming.
This is the fan fiction I'm here for. So
look, we got an orc mom and baby in episode 3. So
don't get me started on that.
It's true. So I thought some of the action was pretty cool. It was pretty quick. Just when I was like, they're falling into that old trope of only one orc attacking at a time, she did some stuff where like she grabbed the chain and spun it around and keep the others at bay. So there was a little bit there that I was like, okay, good, keeping it. But then doesn't she tell one of the orcs to go back to the shadows from where he came?
Yes,
she does.
And that was the final straw for me. That was like, what shadows is she talking about in this instance? Is she talking about the shadows of the trees? The shadows of Mordor, which is newly developed at this moment. It happened at the end of It
happened like 2 weeks ago in Showtime.
Yes.
Luckily for Tim, there was only 2 minutes left in the episode.
Exactly. But that was, the final straw for me. I was like,
done.
I was done. And then she is greeted by Adar, and that's the end of the episode. And I was like, cool, she's already met Adar in season 1, so this will be interesting. But yeah, when she quotes Gandalf yet again, second elf quoting Gandalf thousands of years before he actually will speak those lines.
She actually quotes herself in The Hobbit.
Oh,
in the
does
Hobbit movies, when they are fighting the necromancer and she goes into like dark witch mode where she's all like glowy and stuff and she's speaking in her like big boomy voice, she tells him to go back to the shadow from whence he came and then like banishes him back to Mordor.
See, all of a sudden this episode makes the Hobbit movies look fantastic.
I was waiting for someone to say it.
They do. They really do. I gotta be honest. There is a cut of The Hobbit out online that is called the Tolkien cut. That is just the book.
Oh,
They cut everything else, and I've heard that I have been unable to download it successfully. I've tried. I've heard that it is a fantastic movie. Like that. The Tolkien cut itself is like a 3-hour film of just what's in the book, and it is so good. And I would love to see that. But the problems I had with The Hobbit were not even adding the stuff that happened, like Gandalf and Galadriel and the Necromancer. I was cool with that. I thought that was fine. It was the forced romances and weird, which this show is doubling down on with this Isildur and Esther. This episode left me feeling the way Bryce did at the end of episode 3. However, I do see how this one can set us up to like, okay, let's start moving now. I just felt like this episode stood still in the progress of the story. We know nothing new at this point. They are still trying to get to Celebrimbor with that ring. They're still trying to get to Eregion. Adar is still on his way to Eregion. That story did not progress in this one. Isildur is still wandering back to Numenor. I think that's where he's going. They haven't really said. Is he headed back to Numenor? And guess what?
They just straight up side quested.
Yeah, they're just off on
that storyline was 100% a side quest.
So this one is lost on me. The Stranger and Nori. We still know nothing about the Stranger, Nori, or the Dark Wizard.
I mean, the Stranger's storyline advanced a little bit. We
Okay.
know, like,
I forgot about Tom.
He met Tom Bombadil. He got a clear understanding of what his purpose in Middle Earth might be. Like, he made up some
Brings
space.
me back to one of my issues. How did the Stranger know of Sauron? Did anyone else pick that up? He sat down in there and he says something about, like, am I to face Sauron? And I'm like, Nori and Poppy didn't know jack squat about Sauron in any of this. They have been your only exposition to that. And you just sit down.
No, that's not true. In episode 8 of season 1, when he's, I won't say kidnapped, but when he meets up with the ladies in the all white who are working for the Dark Wizard, they think he's Sauron initially.
That's right.
They so he learned.
Okay,
he learned about who Sauron was from them.
Oh, you mean
that helps me, because I was like, how does this guy know who Sauron is?
Yeah, exactly.
That helps.
Yes, that is how he learned about him.
It's still the end of that scene with Tom and the Stranger is leaning again to Gandalf. And I'm not here for that, as I've said. Because there's also a couple things sprinkled throughout. Like, Nori refers to him as a grand elf. Like, there's a lot of little words.
Well, here's the other thing. They use a term that is used for essentially an arcane focus. So the reason he's looking for a staff is because, I mean, you're a fantasy guy. I'm sure you know this. In a lot of fantasy writing, if you have an arcane focus, that's what helps you control your powers. Your powers you don't need them for your powers. It helps you focus your power so that you can be in more control over the spells that you're casting and stuff like that. The term that they used it a couple times in episodes 2 and 3, I think. They're looking for a Gand.
Well, this was a great talk this week, guys.
All right, Bryce and I are going to wrap this up.
Can't wait for next week.
Yeah. I'm hoping this is misdirection.
Right. It started with the line at the end of episode 8, when in doubt, always follow your nose. That's a Gandalf line. Is it misdirection? Maybe somebody else uses that.
Yep. I'm hoping it's misdirection, much the way they tried to make Sauron like a misunderstood person in the first season.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, they're also setting up the two blue wizards?
I mean, the current known as the Dark Wizard makes a whole lot of sense that would be one of the blue wizards, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never explicitly stated what happened with the blue wizards, but there is exposition Tolkien did hint in some writings that they may have traveled east and formed cults. And that is exactly what we're seeing with this Dark Wizard. So that would fit perfectly into the overall lore.
Yeah. And so I am still holding out hope that the Stranger is the second
blue wizard,
who is the good one. And
this is another thing that, like, I'm not allowing it to bother me, because I'm like, for the purpose of storytelling, all right, we'll see where they go with it. The wizards, the Istari, there's 5 of them. They all were sent to Middle Earth at the same time with the same purpose, and it was at the beginning of the Third Age. So there shouldn't be any Istari in Middle Earth in all of the Second Age. Again, I'm letting that slip because it makes for some storytelling, I guess. So, like, we'll see where they go with it and all that, but technically they shouldn't be here.
Yeah. I think my issue also with this is Not so much necessarily with the fact that this could be Gandalf, but if you go back and watch Lord of the Rings, it would change Gandalf if this was him. So if Gandalf had lived through all of this and gone through one confrontation with Sauron and all of that, his persona later would have been affected by that. And so I can get where they might be like, oh, well, this is going to explain why he has an affinity for hobbits. I'm like, yeah, it also causes a whole lot more issues with when he recounts the tale of this story to Frodo. He's not part of it.
I think anybody that's a fan of the books and or the movies even is all on the same page that we all really hope this isn't Gandalf. we are all acknowledging that it probably is based on the stuff that we've seen so far, but we're all hoping that it's not. We want to see somebody else.
Yeah, I want to see somebody else. I love Gandalf, and, you know, I can see why they would want to make him Gandalf.
For
sure.
It could be. It could be
honestly,
Sauron.
It could be.
I've heard that. I've heard people thinking the one right now with the cult is Sauron.
Saruman.
Yeah. If he could be anyone else, that would make more sense. But then that would kind of almost, I don't know, maybe for me, it kind of feel like just a retread of.
No, you're on it. You're
season
on it.
That's one, where it's like, oh, well, we just did that. And that one kind of, for me, that was underwhelming. So this one would be just even worse, honestly.
Well, I don't want the evil wizard to be Saruman because that totally steals any thunder from his betrayal in Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, no, it's
right. It really can't be Saruman. He can't have been an evil wizard and then a good wizard and then an evil wizard again. Like that. Yeah, no. That doesn't work.
In other words, we were saying they wrote themselves into a hole here. So there you go.
Just make them both the blue wizards, man.
Blue wizards.
These are the two blue wizards. Let's go.
Blue
Let's
wizards,
send it.
and they're safe because, like you said, Tolkien didn't write a whole lot about what they did.
Almost nothing.
So
we know they showed up. We know they wandered off. That's it.
And that all of a sudden, I'm fine with this storyline.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it because now I'm getting some holes filled in something that Tolkien didn't tell us a whole lot about. However, if it's Gandalf, it starts to make more issues than necessary. So that's where, So my recap of this episode. This was the episode that I realized the writers might not know where they're going with some of this. However, like I said, I'm a fan of Middle-earth. I do still think the production design looks pretty good. The cast is pretty solid. I'm here for it. Even if this episode had me rolling my eyes far more than I was like, yeah, where is this going? You know, there were more lines that I was like, and that's from Lord of the Rings, and that's from but that just hurts me because I'm realizing the writers know that they can't top what a British dude did 70 years ago. They can't do better than he did. And that's fine with me because you can't. But Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens got close. But I think that was years of love. So this episode left me feeling a little bit more disappointed than any so far. I think even more. This is probably the weakest episode in the entire franchise for me so far. And that is strictly, and that's so hard for me to say because, like I said, 50% of it is things I wanted to see. It's just, this is not how I wanted to see them. So this episode was a struggle. If it had progressed the story more, like we ended up talking about the stranger because he's really the only one that had any kind of progression in this episode. And that's disappointing. So that's my issue with 4. 4 was a struggle for me. I'm still going to be watching 5 on Thursday. It hasn't lost me yet. I still have too much love for Middle-earth. And I know some people will say like because they love Middle-earth, they won't watch this at all.
Right.
That's ridiculous. But
it's just a different school of thought.
Yep. I will be back. and I'm hoping that some of the things start to coalesce into a clear trajectory. That's where I'm at.
I think I'm probably the most bright-eyed optimist of the group.
That's okay.
So what I will say is I mentioned to you, I mentioned this to you, Tim, while we were waiting for Bryce. I felt like this episode was kind of similar to episode 4 in season 1, in that it kind of laid the groundwork for cooler things to happen in the second half of the season. So like the back half, the front half of season 1 was very much like establishing the characters, establishing the players, their relationship with each other. The second half of the season was like actually doing stuff. There were battles. There was a lot more like interplay between some of the larger groups. It was more entertaining. Bryce mentioned like he liked the second half of season 1 much better than he liked the first half of season 1. I completely get that. I felt like with the Galadriel, Elrond, and the Adar storyline, like this episode set us up for like some pretty cool battle stuff. Like I want to see Damrod just like mowing fools down with a giant like troll hammer or something.
How bad is it that you're rooting for a troll right now?
I know. It's ridiculous, but I'm here for that.
I want that battle at Eregion that they're leading to.
Right.
I'm ready for that. Yep.
I feel like Anatar and Celebrimbor are going to continue to have their like mental gymnastics, and I know how it ends. Like I know who's going to come out on top in that whole thing. I'm really excited to see how that all plays out.
It's going to be helpful.
I don't necessarily think that we're going to see the halflings find the Shire in this season, but like later on down the road, that might be a thing that we get to see. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to see more Tom Bombadil. I'm excited to see like maybe Goldberry get introduced into here. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just more of the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed optimist in this, but like I looked at season 4 and I was like, they're setting a lot of storylines up to give us some really cool moments later on in the season, which is essentially what they did in season 1. So I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying, based on what I've seen and what they've been hinting at, I think we could have a pretty cool second half of season 2.
I got my fingers crossed. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. You said something that I was also excited about, but I forgot.
And Bryce thought it was dumb and he hates it, and that's fine.
You just doubled down after episode 3.
I'm just here to bring you guys back down to earth. That's all.
I like that we have the range right now. We have Caleb, like he said, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Me sitting in the middle that I'm like, I'm glad I saw these things. I'm not happy about how I saw them. And then
I'm not happy how we got here.
You who is like,
and then Bryce is like, everything's dumb and I hate it.
Fantasy football, man.
No, again, if you guys are enjoying it, that's good. Like, more power to everyone who enjoys this show, honestly. Again, I'm the casual fan. I am trying to see what connects to lore and what doesn't. Again, I'm pretty open to this breaking stuff. I understand they are working with a lot of little bits and pieces that was left behind and what they're allowed to actually use from Tolkien. So I'm totally open to them doing, different things that, kind of goes outside the norm. But again, I'm running out of reasons to defend this show at this point as just a casual viewer. If I am talking to another person who's just casually asking, hey, should I watch Rings of Power? No, go watch Game of Thrones. You will be much more happy with your life, and go watch the Lord of the Rings movies. Those are way better in every way.
The thing is, you won't be happy with your life watching Game of Thrones.
What's that? No, I know I'm going to be mad at one point, but it's because I've already started it, because Megan was like, you have to watch Game of Thrones. I'm like, but I've told her for like most of our time together, like I won't start it because I know by the time we get to the final season, I'm gonna be mad, and I'm gonna be so mad because it was so good up to that point, and I will never understand why people say it's better than Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad was perfect. But that's just me.
Look, if you want to get through that, more power to you. Some people just have a much higher tolerance for incest than others. Good for you. Again, no kink shaming here.
I don't know. It's a little better than Orc on Elf. So
Orc on Elf? I don't know about that.
It's just like your opinion, man.
Just like your opinion, man.
Okay, I do need to go to bed. I am playing golf tomorrow morning with Bryce, actually. I did kind of want to talk about why Bryce hated the Orc woman and baby so much, but if we need to save that for another time, we can.
All I'll say is when I think of the orcs in Lord of the Rings, okay, funny story. Megan was walking by while I was watching this section specifically, and she heard me sigh, and she was like, "What's wrong with this one?" And I said, "Okay, just imagine these orcs for a second, okay? I'm going to show you a scene from the Lord of the Rings that anytime I talk about orcs or hear orcs from Lord of the Rings, this is the scene that always comes to mind." So I showed her the scene in Fellowship of the Ring, when like all the orcs are coming out and being like birthed and whatnot, and like this is what I think of when I think of orcs. Like it's just these are brutal. What's that?
That's a casual movie viewer watching it, because that's a special breed of orc designed by Saruman himself.
No, I know, but that's like, this is what I'm saying. Is like, this is the atmosphere and like how I view the orcs. Like these are brutal beasts that are just,
they're born adults.
They are born men among creatures. And
so you're referring to the birth of the Uruk-hai in Fellowship when he crossbreeds.
That's the scene that I showed her. I'm not saying specifically like that's how, like specifically that birth is like orcs, but just that scene and the environment and just that's kind of the culture of the orcs. They're just animals that are birthed to kill, and the fact that they turned
like chimpanzees going at
it. Right. And again, maybe it's a lore thing I don't know about, but when I saw that it was a family of orcs and I'm supposed to sympathize with these creatures that throughout all the movies just did awful things because, evil. I don't know. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I just thought it was stupid.
Those orcs in that scene, a couple of them had yard signs that said "Protect nuclear families." So.
Protect
From a lore perspective, it says I think it's in the Silmarillion that the orcs lived and multiplied in the same way as the children of Ilúvatar, which is elves and men. Okay. So like canonically, there are orc women and they do have orc babies.
Okay. Good to know.
Now, whether or not they have like a nice close family environment where Papa Orc just puts his hand on the head of baby Orc and kisses him on the forehead. Like there was no kissing on the forehead, but like that interaction is definitely up to interpretation.
Okay, so
I can say canonically the fact that there was an orc woman and an orc baby completely checks out.
Okay, cool.
However,
the idea still sucks and the execution sucks. There we go.
Orc dad went out for milk and never came home, and exactly. That's the real problem.
There's a lot of orphaned orcs out there.
And look, I can see what they're trying to do here. The whole thing of Adar taking over instead of Sauron was, these are my children. They're beings of their own. They're not just mindless war monsters. Mm-hmm. Like they should be able to live a life away from all that. That's what they're trying to do. So showing that accomplished that purpose. Whether or not that is a story worth telling is up for debate. But I get why they did it.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it. So it didn't make an impression on me.
Yeah.
But okay. All right. So we'll be back in a week to talk about just episode 5.
it'll be lit. We're all going to be like, wow, what a great episode that was. Everything we said about episodes 3 and 4, man, that's all behind us now.
That's my hope. That's my hope. So we ended up getting about an hour for episodes 1 and 2, and then an hour and a half-ish for episodes 3 and 4. So we'll see you next time. Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional-looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording, and I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you are thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program in progress.
F you.